show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. Yep, very, very much appreciated. Had a lovely email from Tom at Speciality Brands about last week's episode of the show, and he was appreciative of doing the show and was quite happy with my review of Black Top. Maybe not quite so happy with the review of the other bottlings, and sort of said words to the effect of, well, yeah, there are other people that kind of probably enjoy them, and he's dead right, of course. At the end of the day, obviously, my reviews are my opinions at the and so, you know, just because I like or dislike a particular whiskey or rum or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that you guys are going to have exactly the same opinions, you know. And I always encourage everyone to you know, if something sounds like it's your kind of cup of tea, give it a try, you know, and obviously make your own mind up. I mean, people like myself and Ralphie and other reviewers obviously are there to give you a bit of guidance and, you know, give our opinion, sometimes on the technical aspects, sometimes just on purely on the flavour, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, of course, you have to make your own mind up. But anyway, so with that in mind, don't read anything into that comment. With that in mind, we're looking at obviously a selection of whiskies from James Eadie in this week's episode of the show, including a brand new range that they've created called the Distilleries of Great Britain and Ireland range. Now, apparently, this particular range of single cask bottlings has been put together to commemorate a book that they had published called The Distilleries of Great Britain and Ireland 1922 to 1929, lavish hardback book, with pictures of the distilleries as they were at the time. And so what they have done is they have asked illustrator Greg Coulton to do illustrations for the labels based on those pictures from the 1920s, and obviously they have selected some casks from distilleries that are featured in the book. So yeah, it looks all really quite interesting, and yeah, nice to see something new. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, they've had the casks. They could have bottled them in one of their other ranges, like the single cask range or the cask finishes range or whatever. But you know, so obviously, nice to have a little bit of a refresh every now and again. But talking of not necessarily refreshes, but something brand new, I'm also looking at their eponymous blend, the Trademark X. Now, as you well know, this is what started the whole James Eadie business, in that the original James Eadie's ledgers for his Trademark X blend were found by one Rupert, I believe, or a member of the family, I forget which who it was, and they attempted to sort of recreate the blend from, I think it was about 1854, 1850s, something like that anyway. And obviously it contained a number of, well, malts that you probably wouldn't be able to get your hands on now because they were owned by Diageo, but it just so happened that obviously the guy that was putting the blend together used to work for Diageo, and so obviously had some access, shall we say, to those kind of things. So been a long time since I've actually tasted it. I think it was 2017 when it was relaunched, and the last time I tasted the Trademark X was back in 2018, you know, funnily enough. So it's going to be interesting to sort of have another look at that. But the reason I'm looking at the Trademark X is because they have now released a bottling called the Trademark X 100 Proof, which apparently is a recreation of the 1947 bottling. I'm assuming bottled at 100 proof. 57.1%. So this first batch is a limited run of 1,800 bottles, and well, obviously when I introduce the lineup, I'll explain what's actually in it. So as I've got several cask strength whiskies in front of me, I'm going to keep the waffle to a relative minimum and just introduce today's one. So we're going to kick off with the Trademark X. Now, like I said, back when it was first released, it included malts from Aberlour, Benrins, Blair Athol, Campbelltown, Caol Ila, Cregalachi, Dalhuan, Glendronach, Glenturret, Lagavulin, Little Mill. I mean, my God, you know, I think you'd be doing well to get hold of Little Mill these days. And Talisker, along with Cambus and Cameron Brid grains. Now, like I said, this was the original makeup. Whether that's changed or not, I have no idea. Like I said, I mean, there can't be an awful lot of Little Mill knocking around these days. I mean, it's been closed for a number of years. Anyway. So we're then going to move on to the Trademark X 100 proof. So apparently what they did with this is they took, I believe, selected 12 casks of Trademark X and then re-racked those into, because as far as I'm aware, there's no sherry at all in the standard Trademark X bottling, and well, as you can see from the colour, it would seem to back that up unless they're using some really well used sherry casks. So basically, yes, so they took 12 casks of Trademark X and then re-racked them into Oloroso sherry casks for a further year. Then they basically took I think 4 casks, 4 casks, which they then blended back in a single cask of the standard Trademark X and bottled it at 57.1%. Standard TMX is bottled at 45.6%, non-chill filtered, and obviously, as you can see, non-coloured. Right, then we're going to move on to the 4 bottlings that comprise the first releases in the Distilleries of Great Britain and Ireland range. The first one is a 20-year-old Strathclyde grain. This is actually not single cask, this is 2 casks. And was finished for 35 months in first and second fill Masala hogshead. So distilled in 2015, bottled this year at 52.9%. Next bottling we're going to be looking at is a Glengarry, a 13-year-old Glengarry. This is a single cask, as are the final 3. Cask number 374456. It was finished for 19 months in a first fill Oloroso, but distilled in 2011, bottled in 2025 at 52.5%. Second to last bottling is a Glen Elgin, 12-year-old Glen Elgin, again single cask, 21 months finishing in first fill Masala, cask number 373074, distilled in 2012 at 52.7%. And finally ending on a bit of peat, because I like to end with a bit of peat. So this is a 12-year-old Caol Ila, a single recharred bourbon hogshead. Now, I'll be surprised if that actually came directly from the distillery, knowing Caol Ila has a tendency to use predominantly refill American oak. Mind you, I mean, they could fill into sort of these sort of casks purely just to sell out. I don't know. But anyway, so it's possible this might have been re-racked by James Eadie. I don't know. I think if they had done that, they may well have mentioned that. Anyway, so it's a single cask, 313104, distilled in 2012 and bottled at 52.3%. So I think this is going to be a really interesting episode of the show. One's butt is full, as they say. Oh, how many times can I get that one in? Oh, the double entendres. Oh, well. Anyway, let's take a look at the Trademark X, shall we? Right, okay, so let's kick off with a bit of TMX, as they say. Let's see what the nose gives us. Right, first impressions are... it smells a lot younger than it used to, and well, that's not really a surprise. I mean, blends, well, you know, when they get first launched, they have all these wonderful casks and then find that some of those casks are no longer available, or some of the malts are no longer available, and blends, because they want to keep them, as they say, you know, at a relative price point. There's an optimum price point. Right, okay, so let's kick off with the TMX. Let's see what the nose gives us on this one, shall we? Right, first impressions are that it's a bit younger than I remember it, although in saying that, it was a number of years ago that I tasted it. And, you know, I guess certain things may no longer be available. They have to use maybe younger malts. Because I will say that it's got quite a distinctive malt character. The grain is very well kind of contained, and it feels like a high malt content. It's quite fresh. It's got a little bit of sort of classic spade, grassy, citric notes to start off with, and then it sort of becomes a little bit more weighty. I'm getting a lot more of the sort of like the Dal Ewan, the Ben Rins, the Aberlour, the Blair Athol, the weighty, malty spirits coming through. There's a little bit of dried fruit there in the background, which I suggest is coming from the grain. There's a little nippy grain as well, a little herbal grain note as well. I mean, that's a lovely blend. There's not a huge amount of Caol Ila. I remember it being, or certainly the last time I remember it being a lot more richer, a lot less youthful, and a little bit more peat orientated. So I'm wondering whether maybe the Lagavulin has kind of, or maybe disappeared, possibly. But anyway, it's still a really good blend, and this is the whole point. You know, blends should be more about, you know, the sum of the parts, shall we say, and a lot of people just kind of poo-poo blends, and this has got a lovely complexity, and still, like, you know, 40 odd quid, I think, something like that, you know, not too shabby. Anyway, let's sort of pass on. There's a definite edge there, and I'm certainly getting some of that. I'm guessing probably Glendronach coming through on that, with that slight edginess, and that's a nice thing. That's what I like about using these kind of slightly edgy spirits, is they give a blend something quite complex. And it's, like I said, it feels like it's built around the Ben Rins, the Blair Athol, the weighty, oily, sort of malty spirits. There's a little bit of medicinal peat, so maybe there is still some Lagavulin in there, possibly. Again, it's quite youthful. There's a little bit of an off the still note happening. Some nice grain coming through, a bit of charcoal, coal, peat dust on the finish and the aftertaste, a little nippy grain. Again, very heavy malt content. I mean, I would be surprised if this was not around about 60 or 70% malt, because the grain is really well contained, and just adds that little nip to it. So I think, you know, although it may well have changed a little bit since its release back in 2017, I still think that's a really good blend. Right, okay, so let's move on to the new 100 proof Trademark X. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Well, obvious sherry. It's got that sort of quite gritty Oloroso, a little bit of treacle, maybe there's a little bit of sort of pruny fruits, almost kind of verging on the PX. Lot more peat, a lot more Campbelltown funk. Maybe the sherry has emphasised the Campbelltown funk. Yeah, there's a little bit of oily marzipan, grippy spice, a little bit of grainy dried fruit. I mean, that is an impressive nose. It really is. It somehow manages to combine modernity and, you know, an old-fashioned character. It's certainly got that Campbelltown, and the dry peat is giving it that kind of old-fashioned kind of feel, but it has the cleanliness of a modern malt, shall we say, or a modern blend. And that's lovely. I mean, a little bit of vanilla and coconut right on the very end coming through now. I mean, that is a lovely blend, really complex. Whoever put this blend together has done a bloody good job, I can tell you. Let's sort of pass on. Ashy, woody, grippy, quite tannic, to start off with. Moves into sherry dried fruit. There's a little potpourri character, a little bit of youthful spirit, vanilla, coconut, some toffee, burnt wood, real intensity. Again, has that wonderful traditional kind of feel, but a sort of a modern feel at the same time. Some lovely dried fruits as well. More emphasised, the sherry is more in control on the palate, I would say, and although you don't necessarily get the sort of individual malt characteristics per se, it still retains that lovely kind of oily, malty kind of character. Right, it's now got more grain spirit once you put a little drop of water. I'm getting a little bit more of that high tone grain spirit, the sort of lighter sultana, that kind of thing, dried citrus. It's got some nice spices as well. It kind of dampened down the sherry a little bit, and I think it's great. I think I love the way it changes. It's certainly sort of still got some lovely character. Let's see what the pal's like. Still quite sherried on the palate, but that's a little bit more herbal Oloroso now. A bit more spices, a bit more grain spirit coming through. Still has that weighty malt kind of underpinning it all. A little bitterness of dark chocolate, some herbal dark chocolate as well on the finish and the aftertaste. Again, not exactly going to break the bank to buy that particular blend. I think that's in and around the late 40s, possibly 50s, something like that. I think probably, yeah, I think it's about 40s, I think, late 40s. That's good, really like that.
Never mind, be here tonight, wake up your drift inside.
Right, okay, so let's move on to the 20-year-old Strathclyde. So 35 months first and second fill Marsala hogsheads. Quite a dark nose, macerated dark fruit, dark cherry, treacle, herbal Oloroso, oxidised apricot, honey, dried grape. We are very much in the Marsala territory here. It's got that I can sort of almost smell Marsala sponge cake. A little bit of marmalade. The Strathclyde is just coming through. I mean, I think it's one of the more lighter grain styles, if memory serves, Strathclyde. And there's a little bit of, and there is that sort of lightness of dried fruit right there, along with a little bit of coconut, that kind of thing. It's okay. I mean, it's a little heavy on the Marsala, but I think sort of at the end of the day, I think it's relatively well balanced. Let's see what the pal's like. More grain on the palate, more sort of American oak, vanilla, coconut. It grips quite hard. The alcohol and the tannins. I mean, it is 52. Well, not that. It's 52.9, but it grips quite a bit on the mid palate. A little bit of tannin. Again, some Oloroso, herbal Oloroso on the finish. It's a little bit tight. Let's see what a little drop of water will do to it. It's emphasised the sort of Marsala notes, the grapey dried fruits, possibly a little bit more citrus, but it's the spirit character seems to have now, I wouldn't say totally disappeared, but has become sort of a lot more second fiddle to the oak, or to the Marsala. Let's see what the pal's on. Again, more grainy on the palate, more of a nip to it, more of a grainy spiciness. but there's again, like the palate, the sort of the American oak seems to have disappeared off with more of the sort of grapey masala fruits and edgy sort of nippy grain character. I mean, it's pleasant enough, it has to be said. It's you know, I don't think it's been overly finished. Just a little bit heavy on the masala cask, which is to be expected, I suppose. But overall, yeah, not too bad. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 13-year-old Glengarry. Let's see what the nose gives on this then, shall we? You know, one thing that always kind of really fascinates me about Glengarry is the fact that it has this Auchentoshan-like character, which is just, I don't understand. I mean, I know they're sister distilleries, but it's not triple distilled, but it reeks of that kind of Toshan, rose petal, Turkish delight, potpourri, sultana, raisin, walnut. It actually smells a lot older than 13. It's got that lovely kind of almost cognac rancio going on, that sort of oxidised dark fruits. It's a weird and wonderful nose, but not too weird and wonderful. And I love this. I mean, I really do. Okay, I mean, you know, you can't argue cask character, distillery character. It's all there. It has to be said. And you know, it's going to appeal to, you know, you guys that love your big sherries, because it's got plenty of sherry character, but it's got distillery character as well. Not the sort of distillery character you automatically expect with Glengarry, but it's very amplified. I mean, some Glengarrys have less of that kind of Turkish delighty kind of character, but this really is revelling in it, I can tell you. Let's go past that. That's a chewy, malty finish, it has to be said. Burnt toast as well. So it kind of kicks off again with that kind of, you know, rose petal, Turkish delight, and then in comes the sherry, and it's a really dry Oloroso. It's not the sort of like the slightly sweet Oloroso. It's really dry, quite dusty, quite tannic Oloroso. A little bit of vanilla, some spice, some coffee, walnut shell. Grips like hell, it has to be said, but it's got the weight of malt and malty fruit to kind of like see off that kind of grippiness, that tannin. For a sherry matured whiskey, I really like that. I think that's got real balance, and you know, a lot of people seem to think I have it in for the sherry monsters. It's balance that I'm all about. You know I go on and on and on about it, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some cask character. I'm looking for some distillery character. Not quite so complex now. I've put a little drop of water with it. It's probably, yeah, it's still similar-ish, but it lacks the intensity. Obviously, I've taken some of the alcohol away. Let's see what the pass like. Tastes a little younger now. It's lost that sort of cognac kind of characteristic. It's slightly more youthful. There's a herbal bitterness there. Again, it's got that sort of dry Oloroso. I think I prefer that with the intensity of the ABV. I mean, it's still pleasant with a little drop of water, but that losing that intensity has not sort of hampered it. It's just, for me, it's just sort of made it a bit kind of, yeah, okay, it's okay. With the intensity, neat, it really kind of punches home, and you get sort of all of that distillery character and the dry Oloroso, yeah, that's what I prefer, I think. Okay, so let's move on to the Glen Elgin. So this is 21 months in first fill Masala Hoggy. Let's see what the nose gives on this end, shall we? Very masala, quite perfumed, very grapey, very winey. A lot of sweet oxidised fruit, sweet vanilla. Do we get any Glen Elgin character? Not an awful lot. I mean, Glen Elgin stands up to a lot of punishment, it has to be said. But I think this has kind of gone a little bit too far. There's a sort of semblance of estery fruit in the background, but it's kind of, I don't know. It is very much masala orientated. It's that grapey, winey, sweet dried fruits, and I don't think it quite has the balance of the Glengarry. Anyway, let's see what that's on. Grippy, dry tannins, alcohol, oxidised grape, sweet grape, bitter, really bitter on the finish. It feels like it's kind of sucking the moisture out of my mouth. I'm not getting any Glen Elgin character. I'm getting all cask. That alcohol is just so intense, it has to be said. Let's put a little drop of water with it and see what that does to it. Maybe it will take some of the cask away. It does, but it's kind of gone a little bit soapy, getting kind of peach, apricot, soapy peach and apricot. It's kind of, yeah, I'm not loving this nose now with the water, it has to be said. It's gone a bit confected. It's just a bit of an odd one, this, it has to be said. Let's see what the pass I know. I hate to say it, but it's a little bit nondescript and a bit kind of like, that doesn't really give me any highs or lows. It doesn't give me anything really apart from just sort of like this kind of sort of dried fruit kind of character. And yeah, there's no distillery character. It is just one of those classic examples of where the cask has completely overwhelmed the spirit, and for me, it's not floating my boat, as they say. Okay, so on to the final whisky of the afternoon. This is the Caol Ila single recharred bourbon hoggy. Let's see what the nose gives on this one, John. Well, not a lot of oak, I can tell you. It's kind of classic, down the line Caol Ila. Quite fruity. Kiwi, green fruits, apricot, apple. It's even got a kind of green peat kind of character, almost really phenolic, fresh, citric, old school Caol Ila. It reminds me of the Caol Ilas that I was tasting, 20 odd years ago, 25 years ago in actual fact, with that sort of freshness as opposed to sort of like the modern oilier Caol Ila. Mint, dry peat, barley. Oh, I can see why this one sold out really quickly. Bloody good cask of Caol Ila, that's all I can say. Bit of vanilla ice cream, but it's distillery character all the way, and that's what I want. I want my spirit to tell me about the spirit character, the distillery character, with an augmentation of cask. And even though it's a recharred cask, I don't get a little bit of burnt wood possibly, but it's all very subtle. Just right up my street, as they say. Anyway, let's see what it passes like. That's a lovely palate. Again, really old school. It's kind of fresh, citric, capsicum, green pepper, garden peas, mint, salt, dry peat, a little bit of ashiness there, a little bit of kind of burnt wood, toffee, but not too much toffee, subtle toffee. Oh, stunning, absolutely stunning. Tar, darker tar, what the fuck am I talking about? Sorry, naughty word. I'll get sanctioned for that. So yeah, oh, stunning, absolutely stunning. I mean, you know, like I said, you know, you have to go a long way to cock up a Caol Ila. Ooh, naughty word again. Yeah, you have to go a long way to make a mess of Caol Ila, as to be said. It is so consistent. That's actually really quite fruity, quite estery now. Oilier, more modern Caol Ila. Barley, white fruits, little less peat, but there's still some astringent saltiness there. Yeah, I like this. This is good. This is plenty of character. Let's see what it does like now. Certainly more oak now, more vanilla, creamy vanilla, milky vanilla. Still has that kind of old-fashioned, edgy sort of garden peas and citrus and lime and lemon and sort of that kind of thing. It's interesting because, like I said, most of the time you don't tend to get an over oak note coming through on Caol Ilas because they don't age it in particularly active casks for obvious reasons. But this has got a little bit more oak than you would normally. It's almost kind of not an oak Sauvignon, but it's sort of a bit left. Yeah, it is a bit like an oak Sauvignon, a bit kind of left field. It's not what you would expect. But it's not overly oaky. It's got a lovely freshness, but it's got the vanilla and the sweetness, and that is a stunning Caol Ila, it has to be said. Hats off. Right, okay, so let's start today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to Hugh at James Eadie for the samples for today's episode. So, I mean, obviously, you know, as the company that I work for has been working with James Eadie for now sort of more years than I care to remember, and you know, they continually kindly send the samples out, and you know, they put up with my reviews and my criticising of their overly cask orientated stuff. But that's James Eadie. You know what you're going to get with them. And it's finding those kind of interesting sort of balanced, not too heavily oaked bottlings. But the Trademark X, I mean, although like I said, I think it's kind of got a little bit younger, the components have got a bit younger over time, which is not a surprise. I still think that's a really good blend. Maybe some of the components that were originally there have gone now. I mean, who knows? I'm not privy to that kind of information, but I still think a really good blend. The Trademark X 100 proof, spot on, really hits the mark. I mean, again, really well put together, really well blended, not overly sherried, and it has, I mean, you know, there are times when you kind of go on about sort of something being slightly old-fashioned in style, and this, it feels old-fashioned. Maybe that is the Campbelltown character, and I guess a lot of older blends from, you know, back in the sort of, you know, 1900s, 1920s, that kind of thing, featured a lot more peat, a lot more, I would imagine, Campbelltown character, because there was a lot more Campbelltown distilleries back then. But it has the cleanliness of a modern whiskey, and I think that's the key. A lot of the very older whiskies tend to have, I wouldn't say a dirtiness, but they're certainly not as clean as the sort of like the current whiskies. The first of the distilleries, Great Britain and Ireland, range, the Strathclyde. Yeah, I mean, it was okay. I mean, it was a bit heavily sort of cask orientated, but at the end of the day, it relatively well balanced, I think. But just didn't quite hit the heights, as they say, and it's and that I think is a testament to James Eadie, the fact that they set their bar really, really high. And that over the years there have been some absolutely stunning bottlings coming out of James Eadie, and when they kind of just slightly fall behind that kind of benchmark, it can be tough. The Glen was, like I said, it was kind of a classic example of the harmony between the cask and the distillery character. It had the balance that I was looking for. And like I said, I would quite happily drink that. It just had an intriguing character, and just like I said, Glengarry just kind of blows me away. It just shouldn't have this Auchentoshan character. It shouldn't have a triple distill character. But why? Why does it do that? Who knows? The Glen Elgin, again, I'm afraid fell into the kind of overly cask orientated end of the spectrum. No distillery character in reality, and too much cask character. The Caol Ila I thought was absolutely stunning, absolutely lovely Caol Ila. A little bit more oak than you would normally expect, certainly when you put a little drop of water with it, but then it's a recharred cask. But lovely kind of blending of slightly, certainly if you had it without any water, old school Caol Ila all the way, and you just don't see that anymore, it has to be said. So really, really good. If you can find a bottle of that, good luck to you, get one. So that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. Like I said, a big thank you to you from James Eadie for the samples as usual. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the show. I think, again, a balanced appraisal, but as I say, you make your own mind up. If there's something that sounds sort of your kind of thing, get yourself a bottle, give it a try and see what you think. Anyway, all that's left to say is good afternoon and good dramming, and Caol Ila's all mine.